The sun rose gently over the quiet village of Omagu. The air was cool. Birds called from the trees. Smoke from the cooking fire rose like little clouds. By the riverside, a lonely woman knelt on the wet sand. Her wrapper was dark with tears. Her name was Mamezine, the widow everyone knew, but few cared for. She had once been full of laughter. Her house had been warm. She and her husband Nana sold gari and palm oil in the market. They had friends and customers. The children from the neighborhood ran to their house when they had sweet things to share. People said Nana and Mamezine were a kind couple. But Nana died. It was sudden. The doctors could not save him. Since that day, 2 years had passed, but Mamezine's life had not healed. She moved slowly. Her clothes were old. Her cooking pot had cracks. Many days she went without customers. Every morning, Mamezine walked to the river to cry. She liked the river. It listened. It never spoke badly to her. She would sit on the bank and rub her feet in the cool water. Some mornings she would wash a small cloth and hang it over the palm trees. The villagers often saw her there. She would whisper to the flowing water. She told the river small things, where she planted cassava, how her daughter slept, the names of the people who had been cruel. Some people said she was talking to her late husband's spirit. Others said she was going mad. But Mamezine was not mad. She was heartbroken. The river was the only friend who made the pain smaller for a little while. A small boy once asked her in the market, "Why do you always cry by the river?" She only smiled and pressed a piece of fried yam into his hand. She had no energy for explanations. Inside her chest, the heart pressed like a tight stone. That morning, she dipped her hands into the cool water and whispered, "Why did you leave me, Nana? Why did you leave me with these wicked people?" A soft wind blew across her face. For a moment, she thought she heard the river reply. The sound was like someone calling from far away. She closed her eyes and let the water run over her fingers. Her daughter, little Ezine, sat beside her on a flagstone, head bent, humming a song her father had taught her. The tone was thin and sad, but it made Mamezine hold on to the day a little longer. At the river, she could name her losses. She could lift them and lay them on the water. The river took them away, or so she believed. It was her small hope every sunrise. When Nana died, Mamezine expected family to hold her. She thought his people would bring food and sit with her. She believed they would remember the love he and she had shared. She was wrong. Her brother-in-law Okeke moved quickly. He came forth with a loud voice and a set of new boots. He chopped down the palm trees that shaded the compound and planted a sign that showed his name. He said the farmland belonged to the family. He told Mamezine, "A woman does not own land in this house. Go and find something else to do." His eyes were hard. His voice did not shake when he said those words. His wife, Ngozi, smiled like a knife. She would stand at the market and tell anyone who would listen, "The widow is taking what is ours. She eats our brother's food and wears his clothes." The women in the market leaned toward her gossip like it was sweet bread. Slowly, people stopped buying from Mamezine. They feared being shamed for being seen with her. Okeke did the worst. He began to tell a strange story. He said Mamezine had used strange herbs. He said she had spoken quietly to the dead. People who were afraid of spirits nodded. Fear moves fast in small places. Even the pastor who used to visit their house paused before he came in. He would walk past and say a small, hurried prayer for the dead man at the gate. He said nothing to help Mamezine. Children saw and learned. In the school on the hill, a group of children pointed at Ezine and ran away. They called her names that made the little girl hide behind her mother. Ezine held on tight to her mother's skirt when she walked to the store. "Why did they laugh at me?" the child would ask. Mamezine would only tuck her hand into the girl's hair and say, "They do not know better." One rainy market day, a stranger asked Mamezine for a bowl of garri. She sat in with a smile that trembled. When he finished, he leaned close and said, "You should leave. There are many eyes on you." She gave him the last of her kola nut and watched him leave. Soon, Okeke stopped helping the widow at all. He took the better tools and left broken ones for her. He kept the good seeds to himself. He sold the fine palm oil that Nana had pressed and gave the money to his friends. The women who used to speak one to Mamezine now crossed the road when they saw her. When she entered the market, it became quiet for a moment. Even the shopkeeper who owed Nana money refused to speak with her. Only the river remained kind. At night, when the thunder rolled, Mamezine sat on a small wooden stool outside her hut and cried. Her daughter slept on a mat with holes. They ate little. The wind pushed their tin roof. She would press her hand against her heart and whispered, "God, if you can hear me, fight for me. I have no one else." She held on to the last things about Nana: a chipped mug, his cotton shirt, the way he laughed at the market children. In the dark, those small things kept her warm for a little while. But the next morning, the village remembered again, and her hope grew thin like a worn cloth. One night, Mamezine stepped on the half-thin mat, dreamed a dream that felt like the world had moved. Dreams had always been friends of the people of Umagu. Old women said rivers speak to the sleeping. Men said dreams warn you or test you. Mamezine did not know which this dream would be. She saw herself standing by the river as she always did. But the water was not the same. It shone blue and clear like a bright bead. The moon lit it, but there was more than moonlight. The water moved with a rhythm that felt like a song. Slowly, a woman rose from the river. Her skin was smooth like wet glass. Her hair flowed like sheets of dark water. Her eyes were deep like the ocean and held stories older than the village. "Mamezine," the woman said, in a voice that was soft as cloth, "why do you cry every night?" Mamezine's throat tightened. "Because I have been ruined," she said through the tears, even in the dreams. "They took everything from me. My husband's land, my peace, my dignity." The shining woman in the water looked sad. "Your tears have filled my kingdom," she answered. "The river weeps now with you, but do not worry. The time of silence is ending." Mamezine dropped to her knees. The river woman reached down and placed a cool hand on her forehead in the dream. Her touch smelled of wet stones and milled meat. "Who are you?" Mamezine asked. "I am Miriwanyawu," the woman said. The name was like a bell. It carried meaning Mamezine felt in her bones. "I am the spirit of the river. Your pain has reached me." Mamezine's heart pounded. "What will you do? Will you take me away or kill those who wronged me?" "No," the river spirit said sadly. "I will not take a life without reason. But when the time comes, justice will move like water. Go home. When next you cry, cry into the river. The gods have heard enough." But the woman smiled and drifted back into the water. The water took her slowly, and the glow dimmed. Mamezine woke up with her cheeks wet and her mouth tasting like the cool river. She sat under the thin roof and listened. The village was quiet, but her heart was loud. She told her daughter in the morning, "I had a strange dream." Ezine blinked. "Did the river tell you stories, Mama?" Mamezine stared at the little girl and found a small warmth. She had not known her dreams could give her courage. For the first time in a long while, she felt something like hope slip into her chest. The dream did not explain how the world would change. It only promised that the river had heard. That promise was enough to make her stand a little taller. A week moved like a slow cloud. The market continued. The children went to school. Yet a tension hung in the air. Okeke had not forgotten how much he had taken. He wanted more. The village head, a man who liked to keep peace, had begun to talk to Okeke in quiet words. He sounded like a man who did not want trouble. He wanted Okeke to move slowly and take what he thought he deserved. Then one morning, they came. This time they did not shout at the gate. They came with the village head walking between Okeke and his wife, like a calm river between two rocks. Their faces were not angry, but set like stone. Manezile, the old man said, Okeke says you are refusing to move out of your late husband's house. Is that true? Manezile looked confused. Moved out? This is where I raised my child. Where do you want me to go? Okeke stepped forward, his mouth tight. You will go anywhere. You are not part of this family. My brother's house now belongs to me. The village head sighed and shifted his weight. Madam, it is better you live peacefully before trouble starts. Tears filled Manezine's eyes. She looked at the faces of men who had walked past her hut so many times. She thought of the pot on the fire that trembled when the wind came. After all I suffered, after all my husband worked for, you want to throw me away like rubbish? Her voice broke. Okeke spat on the ground in front of her and laughed. His wife, Ngozi, pulled her wrapper to her chest and sneered. Go and cry to your river. Maybe it will build you another house, she said loud enough for the children to hear. The villagers laughed like a stone dropped into smooth water. The laughter ringed out and spread. Ezine clung to her mother's skirt and hid her face. A neighbor who once sold palm oil with Ezine looked away as if he had no eyes. A small boy who used to call Ezine friend pointed at the window and ran. That night, they slept on the cold floor. The thin mat hardly kept out the chill. Mamezine rocked her daughter and hummed the song Nana used to sing. Her voice was the only soft thing in the house. Lightning flashed and the roof clicked. She whispered to herself, they have mocked me enough. Tonight I will cry to my river one last time. Her daughter slept fitfully, and when she woke, she asked, Mama, will the river help us? Mamezine kissed her forehead and said, maybe it will, maybe it will. We will see. The night was heavy and quiet. The village seemed to hold its breath. Mamezine carried a small clay lamp that shone like a weaker star. Ezine wrapped her thin shawl around her shoulders and followed. The path to the river was narrow and lined with tall grasses. Frogs sang in the dark. The moon hid behind the clouds. Mama, I'm scared, little Ezine said, her voice shaking. Don't be afraid, my child. Mamezine replied softly. We are going to talk to the only one who listens. They reached the river and sat on a stone. The water moved like a long cloth pulled slowly. The lamp flickered. Mamezine held her daughter close and began to cry. It started as a small sound, then it grew heavy. Tears ran down her cheeks and dropped into the river. The current took them. The wind rose and sounded like fire singing. The lamp bent and danced. The water near their feet began to move differently. It spun in little circles and then in bigger ones. The sound was like a drum. The river seemed awake. Mamezine spoke, not yelling, but with a steady cracked voice. River Mother, she said, I have endured enough pain. They have taken everything from me. If I am guilty, let me drown. But if I am innocent, let the river speak for me. Ezine tightened her fingers in her mother's sleeve. A light, faint and blue, glowed from within the water. It rose and fell like a slow heart. The river sang a soft note. The air felt cold and gentle at the same time. The grasses bent and the night animals became quiet. Then, like a face in a mirror, a woman's face appeared on the water surface. The same face from Mamezine's dream. She looked like she had been made from water itself. Your tears have reached the deep, a soft voice whispered, like someone speaking from the inside of the night. Go home and rest, my child. By tomorrow, justice will flow. Ezine let go of her mother and moved her head to the side. She had never seen anything like it. The water shivered and the shape faded. The blue light sunk under the surface. The river became still as if nothing had happened. Mamezine sat for a moment, feeling the cool of the stone under her feet, feeling the wet on her face. She did not know what had come. She felt peace for the first time in years. It was a small, strong peace that settled in her like a seed. They walked on slowly. The night seemed kinder. The hen that had stopped laying eggs in the day pecked at the yard quietly. Mamizine tucked her daughter into the mat and kissed her forehead. She looked at the small carved photo of Nana by the mat and told him in a whisper, "The river had me tonight." She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She only knew she did not feel really empty anymore. The next morning, the sky was strange. The clouds gathered like a crowd outside the door. People said the clouds were heavy with rain and that it would pass. By noon, a few drops fell and then it started to pour. First, it was soft, like a hand tapping glass. Then it grew stronger. The rain drummed on the roofs and ran down the earthen paths in small rivers. By mid-afternoon, the rain did not stop. It kept falling and falling. The river began to rise and swallow the banks. The water ate the mud on the edge and ran into the trees. The animals made small sound and moved toward higher ground. The wind sang in the tree branches, and the whole village felt the earth shake a little. By evening, the river had climbed. Men who had lived by the water all their lives watched with their eyes opened wide. The river did not just flow, it moved like a living thing. The people of Umagu had never seen such rain. They began to shout, "The river is angry, the gods are angry." They ran to lift the goods in their houses. They banged pots that could float. Some tied small bundles to their heads and ran. Okeke and Ngozi, who lived close to the river, tried to rescue their things. Okeke rushed about like a man who had woken from sleep. He called for his friends. They threw ropes and pulled sacks, but the river came stronger than their hand. It pushed through the doors like a new herd of cattle. Walls trembled and then broke. The water took their goats and the yams in the fan. It tore the new motorbike from its parking space and carried it down like a small silver fish. People screamed and ran. Babies cried. The old leaned on walking sticks and shouted for their families. The path to the high place were crowded. Some people slipped and fell. The water took their goods and their hopes. It held on to their things like a thief who will not let go. Where the farm had been, the soil that Okeke had called his, the water opened like a wound. The plants bent and floated away. The fence that had once marked Nana's land dissolved into the muddy water. But in all that noise, in all that rushing, the small hut of Mamezine on higher ground stood dry. The water passed around it as if it knew better places to touch. Some villagers saw it and stood stunned. How could this be? They shouted, "Look, her hut! It is safe!" By nightfall, half the village had lost homes or food. The rain stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The river sighed and calmed. The sky cleared and stars peered out like curious children. The people of Umagu gathered in small groups, wrapped in clothes, shivering and wet. Some sat on the road and cried. Others stared at the place where their lives had been. Silence fell over the village. Even the dogs did not bark. The river lay smooth and quiet again. It looked gentle, but everyone who had seen its hunger that day would not call it gentle again. The next morning, the village held called a meeting. People from the edges of Umagu, those who had escaped to a neighbor's house and those who had slept in the church porch, they stood under the big Iroko tree that had watched the motion of meeting. Their faces were tired, their feet were muddy. They had lost food and crops and tools. Some had lost more. The village head stood and spoke with a voice thin with age. "We have all seen what call it gentle again." The next morning, the village head called a meeting. People from the edges of Umagu, those who had escaped to a neighbor's house and those who had slept in the church porch, they stood under the big Iroko tree that had watched the nation of meeting. Their faces were tired, their feet were muddy. They had lost food and crops and tools. Some had lost more. The village head stood and spoke with a voice thin with age. "We have all seen what happened," he said slowly. "Only the widow's house was spared. Maybe the gods were speaking through the pain." Okeke and Ngozi came to the meeting. Their clothes were torn, their hair was wet. They could not stand up straight. The same faces who had laughed at the widow now looked down. The men who had once followed Okeke in his anger now moved away. Some avoided his eyes. Okeke could not speak at first. He fell on his knees and grabbed his hands together. The mud streaked his palms. "Forgive us," he whispered. "We were blinded by greed. We did not know your tears would bring the river's anger." Ngozi's face was streaked with dirt like a mask. She began to cry, a real cry different from the loud mocking she had used before. Her voice shook. "Please forgive us. We never thought it would come to this." People listened. Many looked at the widow. Amazingly stood by the small door of her hut. Her posture was straight but old. She had a cloth wrapped around her head. She did not move quickly. She looked like a woman who had been carved by grief. Ezinne held her small hand. The village head spoke again. "From today, Nnana's land belongs fully to his wife and daughter. Let no one ever take what is not theirs again." He raised his hand and the crowd murmured. Some shouted, "Yes!" and some put their hands on their mouths. No one tried to argue. Okeke stepped forward and placed a small sack of yams at her feet. It looked small and ashamed. He could not find enough words to fix what he had done. Instead, he offered what little he had. A gentle wind blew from the river and touched Mamezine's face. The people bent in respect without thinking. Mamezine closed her eyes for a moment and whispered, "Thank you, my river." She did not shout or call for more. She only breathed, and the breath seemed to lift a small weight from her chest. That night, she and her daughter lit a small lamp by the water. The moon was full and bright. The river glowed softly. It looked like the place where the dream woman might have been hiding. The villagers came to the river to put flowers and to say sorry. Even the pastor came close and touched the water with a small bowl. The damage from the flood would take many months to repair. Some houses could be mended. Some fields needed new seed. But the people had learned a harsh lesson. They had seen pain and the power that answered it. The story of that night went through the village like a new drum beat. Mothers told the children to respect others. Men spoke quietly to their sons. People stopped making jokes about widows. Little acts changed. A small saving box for the market family started with a coin from a man who had mocked the widow before. The village moved slowly toward kindness. When the season of planting returned, Mamezine planted cassava where her husband had once planted. Children came to learn how to grind garri at her house. She taught them small songs. The market women who once turned away now bought her goods and sat to help. The pastor began to visit when the sun was high. Life returned in places. In this life, we must remember that every tear has a voice. The cry of a broken heart never goes unheard. When people suffer quietly and are treated unfairly, the world itself feels their pain. Sometimes, justice may not come through human hands. It may come through the unseen powers of creation, through the wind, the water, or the very earth we walk upon. Many people think the weak have no power, but that is not true. A sincere heart, a mother's prayer, and the tears of a pure soul can shake mountains and call down answers from the heavens. The story of Mamezine teaches us that cruelty is never forgotten, not by God, not by the Spirit, and not by time. When you have power over another person, use it with kindness. Do not use it to oppress or humiliate. For every act of wickedness, there is a season of harvest, and just like seed grow in silence before they rise from the ground, the consequences of evil go quietly before they appear. Let us learn to listen to the cries we ignore, to comfort those we mock, and to stand for what is right even when no one else does. Because one day, the same river that carried away another person's pain might come flowing toward our own doorsteps. The story of the widow is not just about revenge. It is about justice, patience, and faith. It reminds us that no good deed goes unnoticed, and no wicked It reminds us that no good deed goes unnoticed, and no wicked act escapes the eyes of truth. So when you see someone suffering, don't laugh, don't turn away. Help them if you can, or at least pray for them. For the tears you wipe today may be the same tears that would cry against you tomorrow. Remember, when the innocent weep, the heaven listens, and when the heaven speak, even rivers. Thank you for listening to this story. If you haven't subscribed by now, I don't know what you are waiting for. Please do well to subscribe to this channel for more interesting and educative story. Turn on your notification bell so you'll be notified when new stories are being dropped. Like this video and comment what you think about the story. Did the river overreact? I want to know what you think. See you in my next one. God bless you.